we were coming down through the real high canyon part of it, where those walls just go up forever. And a rock came off the high canyon wall, big rock. And all by itself, just flew down towards the highway and ended up, I think it bounced kind of right next to the car, and then flew into the passenger side of the front seat of the car where Kathy was sitting. And the rock it killed her instantly. And then the rock rolled back over the back seat of the car where the boys were hanging out, and seriously damaged both of them as it continued on its way past the car. And I managed to finally bring the car under control, get it stopped on the side of the road. And the car was utterly silent. I knew Kathy had been killed, and I looked back at the boys, and they weren't moving either. I wasn't sure what kind of condition they were in, but it was pretty clear that it wasn't good. I remember just the rock had ripped a hole in the top of the car above the kids' heads, really, behind me. And the rock had left me untouched. For no rhyme, no reason. That's what happened. And then, I don't know, I started screaming and yelling through that torn part of the top of the car. I'd pretty much gone insane at this point. As you can imagine, I was feeling thoroughly crazy. And a couple of people who had been driving along the highway had stopped, and I think one guy came running up to the car and was leaning in through the torn top of the car and helped me get the boys out through that torn top. One after the other, I lifted the boys up, and he picked them up from outside, and I guess he laid them down. Kathy was so badly injured that we didn't bother to take her out of the car right then. It was clear that there was nothing we could do for her.
And can you go back to that feeling of what that felt like in that moment?
Well, I was pretty close to being insane at that time. After I saw that the rock demolished the car, the top of the car, and then the boys being taken out and put on the side of the road, and they weren't moving. You know, it's just, I just found myself screaming at those rocks so high, far above me. I was yelling at God. How could you do this? How could you let this happen? And I was thoroughly crazy. You know, I didn't know what to do or what to say or where to go with it. It's just, I was filled with all those emotions we've just mentioned.
And how long do you feel like you kind of stayed in that place?
Well, shortly after that period of initial craziness, I kept running over to the boys to see, and there's no movement. One of the boys, the older, Tanner, is motionless. I don't think he's even breathing. Shay is still alive, but he too is unconscious. So they're working harder to try to keep him alive and to try to revive him further. And then I guess after I got it out of my system for a few minutes and got done screaming at God, I started to I guess I calmed down a little bit, became a little bit more sane, and I began thinking more about, is there any way to save these boys?
You had some hope at least.
There wasn't a lot of it. There was a little. And I think it was really the next day when I kind of was confronted with this, who am I now? And what's worth living for? I went home from the hospital. Cecil drove me home. And when I walked in the house, there were several friends there and Piper. It was wonderful for me to have Piper there. She was my last remaining family member. And she was, as you probably have figured out, she was my first child, my oldest. And she just, you know, wrapped her arms around me, literally or figuratively or both. And told me she was staying. She wasn't going anywhere. And she did. She just moved into the house, this empty house. Thank God she was there. And we talked about a lot of things. The thing that was the first issue or important matter that seemed to be going through my head and my heart was Now what do I do? What's the right thing? What do I need to do for myself and for whoever? For the first couple of days, I was very torn between staying and leaving and going with them, which was pretty appealing. I just finally reached a place in my head and heart that I just decided I wanted to stay the course here on Earth. And so I began thinking about, looking at, okay, if that's what we're going to do, how are we going to do it? But it was quickly apparent to me that each of the boys were in the Aspen school system, and different grades, obviously. And I decided in those first several days after the accident that I needed to visit with those two classes, those two classrooms, those kids.
What was that like?
It was hard. You know, it was hard to get it right because I had to talk to them. I wanted them to know what had happened, and I wanted them to know how I was feeling, how I was doing, where, you know. So I went first to Tanner's class. You know, I'd called ahead and talked to his teacher and told her that I wanted to visit with the class, talk about all this, and she said that's a great idea. And so she set it up for, I guess, the next day after I talked to her. And then I'd also called Shay's teacher, and same thing, decided that I told that teacher that I wanted to come speak to Shay's friends, classmates. Those were, as you might imagine, extraordinary times with those kids. They were in deep grief, scared, angry, crazy. Both the classes did that. They kind of asked the tough questions. The questions went right to my heart. Yeah, this necklace was it was one of two earrings that I had given to Kathy not too long before the accident. Christmas gift, probably. And this stone had been knocked off of Kathy's ear. I guess he was an engineer who investigated the accident site. Found this stone on the side of the road, right where Kathy had been, probably removed from the car. And he said, I looked at it and I learned this. And then he decided that it belonged with me, and so he mailed it to me. Didn't call me, just put it in an envelope with a brief note, basically to the effect that this obviously belongs with you.
And you've never taken it off?
No. So I got that in the mail. It was at least a week or 10 days after the accident, and I was down at the office and I looked at it. I went across town to a jeweler I knew and asked him if he could put this, on a chain that I could wear around my neck. And he said, "You bet." And he did. I'd never taken it off.
When you think back on how you were able to survive this and to wake up each day and to get up and get out of bed, how do you have an answer for that?
I don't know how coherent it is, but yeah, I would tell myself each day, lying in bed before I would even get up, that okay, all right, it's another day. And you're gonna have to get out of bed, get some clothes on, and get out in the world and make it happen. You're just gonna have to get back into the real world again, a little bit at a time. But that was a good part of the time, particularly when I would be at home and in bed alone, or I didn't know whether I was crazy or sane. You just couldn't tell the difference in my emotions. It was a wild, crazy, uncontrollable time. But as the weeks went by, it became that those moments and those experiences became less meaningful. It just became less powerful. And other things began to come into me, or to maybe come out of me. When I started thinking more about okay, now that we've decided to stay here on this earth, what are we going to do with our life? What's next? And what role can I play in this? How much control, or how much do I have to say about it? And how much do I not have to say about it? How much of it is just totally beyond my control, and I began to feel like more and more things were becoming manageable again in my life. Mainly emotional stuff. The pain of terrible loss is just so intense that I think each of us, that experiences anything like it, goes through it in our own way. But we find that whenever we have anything to say, we're talking the truth. Our only instinct is to tell it like it really is inside here. There's really nothing more important that I could offer my family that was gone. The most that I could offer them was my love and honor.